Howdy, and welcome to the Aggie Greats podcast. My name is Kenner, and I'm so glad you joined us this week as we dive deep to understand what makes the great, great. Here on Aggie Greats, we get real as we answer some tough questions and uncover transformative ways to live life to the fullest. We're so glad you're along for the journey, so let's pursue greatness. Well, howdy, and welcome to the Aggie Greats podcast. Today I'm joined with Shane Vinsant, who not only played for A&M, but also coached. When he graduated, he was my coach last year, and now he's out doing his own thing. And so, Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Kenner. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's so funny because just this past year, you were the one coaching me on court, and so, I mean, it's funny to see just kind of that transformation. And so something that I've always wanted to do was kind of go back and look at your story because I understand where I've come from. I think that it's cool having someone who has been where I've been and kind of already walked the path that I'm walking right now. And so I'd love to hear maybe an intro of like kind of where you started, where you grew up, and then how you ended up at A&M where I am right now.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town. It's called Nacogdoches, Texas, and its nickname is Naca Nowhere. People call it Naca Nowhere, and its claim to fame is it's the oldest town in Texas. Is what they claim. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, I grew up there. My dad was the high school tennis coach in Nacogdoches, Nacogdoches High, and my mom was a flight attendant for American Airlines. And so she was commuting back and forth to Dallas, but grew up in a really small town and kind of fell in love with the game there, and just was always around the tennis courts because my dad was out there so much and would come to his practices and he kind of introduced me into the game, and he actually kind of motivated me in the beginning by telling me if I got a certain number of balls off the wall, I'd get Pokemon cards or, different things like that. And so, just really fell in love with it, spent a ton of time at it until I was about 10 years old. And then we ended up making the move to the Dallas area, partially because of my mom's job, so she didn't have to commute as much. And then also the competition was not, I had kind of by 10 or 11 kind of passed the competition there. I was playing like the 40-year-old men in town, and so I needed some more people to battle and to train with, and so we moved to Dallas when I was 10 or 11.
Did you get serious about tennis when you were 10, or was it still just kind of like, oh, I'm playing for fun?
I was pretty serious pretty early.
Okay.
Like I was a super champ at 9 or 10 years old, and was kind of moving up in the state. And at 10, I don't remember exactly what I was ranked. I wasn't, maybe top 5 or 10, but I was moving up in super champs and was really knew I wanted to pursue it and be a good player. And so moved to Dallas and started training there. And then also my dad's always been my coach growing up and just throughout my whole career. And he's basically who I attribute a ton of my success to. But for a few years there, like 10, 11, 12, it was really tough, like having a dad as a coach, and we would just get into it all the time on the court and fight just for a few years there. And so he still worked with me during that age, but I was also going to some other coaches and academies in Dallas just to kind of get some different, see a different face out there, different opinions. And then,
did you ever consider switching sports?
Not really. I played basketball growing up and soccer, and I just always loved tennis. At one point I told my dad when I was kind of deciding between tennis and basketball, I told him that I decided I was only going to go pro in one sport, just tennis. I'll forget basketball.
That's great. So how did you make that jump from, like, when you were 10 to 12, being kind of pretty well ranked but not, like, super high, to kind of deciding, hey, I want to go play in college and I want to keep doing this?
Yeah, I don't know, like, I don't think there was any anything that really changed. It was just continuing to put a lot of time in, a lot of repetitions, and putting in the kind of the hard hours on the court and continuing to kind of enjoy it. And I don't know, just kind of each day, like working on the things that you need to work on, and I don't know that there was like any big change per se. It was just kind of like this kind of path to just getting better.
One day better.
We were always focused on just getting a little bit better each day, each week, and I think it helped. By the time I was 12, I had moved up quite a bit and was playing more of the national tournaments and getting some more of those opportunities.
Would you say that there's a pretty big jump from kind of playing in juniors to playing in college? Like, was that a big culture shock for you when you got into college?
Oh yeah, I think I think the college game is just like so much more physical. It honestly, the matches just feel different with just the crowd and
even though it's no ad and play lets like
it's just like everything feels maybe faster and just higher stakes. You're playing for your team and your best friends and so honestly, like almost watching some of the college matches as a junior, I thought I don't want to say like I thought the level wasn't really high because I knew there were tons of good players and it was a good level, but you almost don't understand it before you're in it, that there's a lot of pressure and sometimes it's harder to perform, when you're playing for a team than when you're just playing for yourself. So, it feels a lot different.
When you got out of college, was that pressure just like instantly gone, or was it different? Like, did you find that it was almost more pressure playing professionally than it was in college, or is it just, again, like a completely different jump?
Completely different. No, I don't think there's any comparison to the pressure that you play, that you feel in college playing for a team. I think the college game really prepares you for the professional tour after, because if you've played when the match is coming down to you and it's a 3-all deciding match, then you can play for yourself, even if it's in front of a lot of people.
Did you ever consider just not going to college and going straight on the pro circuit, or did you always want to go to college and kind of get that atmosphere?
Yeah, I did for a little bit, and I talked about it with my parents and my dad, and but it was never really too much of a pool. I always, I had grown up going to some college matches, and always wanted to play college tennis, and honestly just don't think I was ready to go straight into the pro tennis. I think that's right for some people, but I think too many kids just go straight into it that aren't ready.
What do you think they miss? Like, what are they missing by not going to college?
I think just one, like with their games, I think they're missing the physicality. I think most 17, 18-year-old guys are not really men yet. They haven't developed their legs and grown into their bodies and into their game. And then experience-wise, I think they're missing just so many things in college. Just so much growth playing for not only yourself and playing for a team. Tennis is overall a very selfish sport. Yeah. And I think there's so much good that comes out of playing for a college team and the camaraderie and being able to handle different things in life with school and being able to find balance and I think it's right for some people to go, if they can go make a living and that's what they want to do right away, then great. But I think the vast majority of people need a little more time, a little more time in the oven to develop as a person, as a man, and also to develop their game.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, this might be just my perspective, but I think it might also be a little short-sighted because, like you said, there's a lot of development that happens during those college years, but it's also something where especially, I guess, if you're playing at your level where you're able to play on scholarship and you're able to, not necessarily come to school for free, but get a significantly like cheaper college experience, I think, it's kind of like a no-brainer for me, because if you get injured or something happens, you don't have necessarily a backup plan. And that's kind of the thing that's always been in the back of my mind with tennis is, I love playing tennis. It's a sport that I think is like phenomenal, but if I broke my leg tomorrow, where would I be? And I think that that's a question that a lot of players and a lot of people don't ask themselves until it actually happens. And then you kind of don't really have a plan B. It's just kind of like, oh, shoot, like here we are.
Right.
What do I do? And I don't know if that's, for everybody, but.
No, exactly. I think it's, I've talked about it with my business partner, Jeremy. It's kind of like, what's the value proposition here?
Yeah.
I mean, you go, by going to school on scholarship, you're getting amazing training at A&M, from some of the best coaches. That's worth a lot of money and a lot of value. And then the education alone, is worth it's worth a lot.
Yeah.
And then if something happened to you, a big school, and especially a school like A&M is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of value there. And I think if someone's going to school and they're, incurring tons of, maybe student debt or something, and, and they're not an athlete and they're never going to use their degree, then maybe the value isn't there. But I think for most people, especially student athletes, there's tons of value.
Yeah, I agree. What was kind of the plan A when you came out of college? Was it kind of always I wanted to go play pro, or did you want to go straight and use your finance degree, or kind of what was the game plan?
Going into college, it was definitely I want to go after this. I want to play professional tennis, and I want to see how high I can get.
Yeah.
By the time I was done, I absolutely loved my college experience. Loved playing for the team, but also kind of really was starting to get an interest in the finance and business, and so I was a little bit torn after. I didn't know whether I should go give it a shot. I felt like I was, a little bit, my body was a little beat up. Maybe I wasn't playing my very best the end of my senior year as compared to my sophomore, junior. And so I was pretty torn on whether or not to go give it a shot, or to go into business, get a job, or do something else. And but I had put in so many years, so much work, and felt like I, had a chance at it. So I decided to give it a run and give it a shot. And so I played for about a year and a half, a little over a year on the tour after, and traveled all over the place.
Yeah.
And
did you have your own? Was your dad your coach when you played pro?
Yeah, my dad was my coach, as well as coach at Brookhaven, Dave Anderson. But my dad got to travel with me to some pretty cool places.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really good. I'm glad I gave it a shot and played. And so I got to not too high, around 600 in the world, and had to have a foot surgery and stopped after a year and a half, but gave it a run and then transitioned into coaching after.
Was that a lot of traveling? I mean, I kind of like being at home and kind of staying here, but I also think being able to travel and play the sport that you love is an amazing opportunity. Was that pretty challenging on you, just having to move from place to place, never really having kind of a home base, or was that kind of something that you really enjoyed, being able to just have a new place that you woke up every day or every week?
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy amount of travel. It's something that I think you have to have the personality that you really like that or don't mind it, like you're just totally unfazed by that. Or if you don't have that kind of personality, I think you have to have such a support system where you're traveling with, a coach and a good group that you really enjoy and like, and have a really good home base. And I don't mind traveling, like it was fine like the first week or two wherever I was, but then like the third week you're like I wasn't traveling with people a lot. So third week, like kind of alone. You know, it was a grind. You know, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I did it, but I think it's super important to have a support system where you have a really solid home base. You know, people to travel with.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems like, you know, like guys like Val and Hottie and Arthur, you know, some of these guys that are doing really well that were on the team.
Yeah.
With me and some of these former Aggies, seems like they've kind of figured that out and have gotten that, and that's, I think, super important.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think the difference is? You think it's just being prepared for it, just kind of knowing going in, hey, this is what I'm going to be dealing with? Or is it kind of a mindset of, you know, I'm here for a reason, and maybe, like you said, maybe it's that support group, or maybe it's finding other people who have a same vision and a same goal to travel with. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's any one thing. I think it's a combination of having even you know, things as simple as having people to kind of take your mind off of the
where it's not all tennis.
It's not all
tennis
and
sports.
Yeah, and you can get away a little bit and have somewhat of a normal, you know, social scene. And then I think also having guys that are pushing you. That's why college is. I think it's so easy to get better because you have so many guys around you that are pushing you each day. And then honestly, I think the biggest thing is even you could be. You know, you could be 20 in the world, and all those guys are top 10, whatever. They all have coaches. It's not because maybe the coach is more knowledgeable about tennis than they are, but it's to have a different set of eyes on you. And I think you just can't see your own game totally clearly. You know, you have to have someone watching from the outside, even if it's just, you know, one or two little things a week, little tips here and there. I think that really helps you stay on track and progress, and, you know, and little things set in where you're maybe develop a bad habit or two, you know, even at that level, maybe a little quirk happens on your strokes or something, and to have a set of eyes watching that, I think is really valuable.
Yeah.
You know, like guys like in golf, like Tiger Woods, like, you know, multi-major champion, changed his swing and you know, is still adjusting things. And I think it's the same in tennis. I think there has to be adjustments all the time.
Yeah, you're never going to reach this level where you're just like, oh, this is the best I'm going to do. You know, it's like it's a continual growth. And I think that's what makes tennis fun, is that there's always something to work on. There's always something to get better at. And I think that's true for most sports. You know, it's kind of this – it's funny because I'm so much of a perfectionist, but tennis is the most imperfect sport you could be in. You know, it's like it's all about minimizing error and who can make the fewer errors. And so I always laugh about that because I guess even when you get to the professional level and you're top 10, top 20 in the world, you're still making mistakes. You're still, you know, shanking the ball up into the stands. You know, you see that all over TV and whatnot. But, you know, and so I've always kind of wondered how, you know, say your dad wasn't your coach when you got out of college, how does somebody who maybe like some of the guys on our team who come from a different country, they're here on scholarship, they're playing, how does somebody like them go from playing college and being like, okay, I want to go pro, like financially? How is that? How did you, you know, obviously having family is helpful when you're traveling, but how is it feasible for someone who's trying to work their way up to pay for all the coaching, to pay for the expenses and the hotels and all the food?
Well, I think it's one of the most difficult things about our sport, you know. For me, having a coach and then having a mom as a flight attendant to help with flights, those are the two biggest expenses probably, are flights and coaching. And it's still expensive, you know. And so, no, I mean, I think it's not a there's no easy answer. It's a sacrifice, you know. I think a lot of guys are able to, if they can really show that they've got a legitimate shot, there's sponsorship opportunities. where people have an interest in seeing someone succeed and helping sponsor. But that's a stressful thing kind of in itself a little bit. Like you're worried about like trying to get better as a tennis player, and you're trying to focus on, your game, your confidence, and then you're having to worry about fundraising, for the next few months. And so that can be, I know that's super stressful for a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, like I've heard of people basically taking out loans, getting loans to do it, and so.
And then that's where, like, if you get injured, something happens to you, then you're in a lot of trouble. And I think, and that's kind of been the big question in my mind, because it's like, okay, you invest all this time into tennis, and you're spending 6-8 hours a day training, but then at the end of the day, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's kind of an unknown. And I think it's something that you're really passionate about. And I think even, everybody gets injured. Everybody has setbacks. Everybody faces obstacles. But it's like, how do you prepare yourself for that? And that was actually a question I wanted to ask, was kind of what was maybe in college, what was one of the biggest maybe setbacks that you had? Or maybe it's not in college, but maybe it was right when you got on the pro tour. Like, what did you have a big setback, an injury in college that kind of made you start kind of questioning where you were at?
I was pretty fortunate. I never had any, crazy major injuries that I had to recover from or do major rehab. I had my foot that kind of was towards the end of my tennis career. The only thing I can think of, I was kind of a setback in college, was my sophomore year. I was probably playing the best tennis of my life, or at least I thought I was, and I was having a really good year and playing super well, and then dealt with some like cramping issues and just kind of weird like heat issues and cramping, and it actually happened in a really big match during NCAAs that I ended up that I ended up losing, and then it was kind of a little bit of a battle with it from there. Like during the singles NCAAs, dealt with it again in the I guess the round of 16 of the NCAAs, and so that was really tough because I felt like super fit. I felt in really good shape. Felt like I was playing the best tennis of that I had played up to that point, and then was putting myself in positions to be where I wanted to be, but then just kind of dealt with some cramping, heat stuff that I never really feel like I totally figured out. I don't feel like it was as simple as just drink more or more electrolytes. So that was a setback that was tough from my sophomore to junior year that I kind of dealt with.
Gotcha. Yeah, sheesh. Yeah, it's always one of those things where it's like everybody thinks that college is kind of a shortened format, and that it's like, but I think pressure has a lot to do with that as well. I mean, you're competing at a high level, and I think all of the emotions kind of erodes some of that. I don't know. I mean, I definitely have experienced that where it's like, my first college match, it was like, I mean, it wasn't like a super big match, but you're like, at the end of it, you're just absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
You win the match like 0-1, and you're like, it took less than an hour, but you're absolutely drained.
Yeah, you're just so amped up for that hour.
And in juniors, I was playing like 4 matches in a day, and I was like ready to go. Just I was not even sore the next day. It's funny to see the big difference there.
Yeah.
So how did you take obviously you achieved a really high level in doubles and in singles. You're All-American in both at some point. How did you take those experiences and those mindsets and apply them into kind of what you're doing now? I guess why don't you give a quick synopsis of where you are right now? Because obviously, you graduated from A&M with a finance degree. You went and tried pro for a year and a half, and now you're working with Jeremy on some stuff. What is that, and kind of how did that start?
Yeah, so after I played the tour, I came back to A&M and got into coaching, and was with the women's team for a semester, and then was with you guys for a few years with the guys team, and then after this last summer's camp, decided to take it a different direction and to start a business and started a business with Jeremy Efferding, who was one of my teammates and one of my best friends. And so yeah, we're about 7-8 months into real estate business where we're kind of focusing on short-term rentals and Airbnbs and doing some other stuff too, just kind of real estate investments, but with a focus in kind of the Airbnb short-term rentals.
I like that. How did you? What made y'all pick that out of? Obviously, kind of you can do with. I mean, you did a finance degree, but then moved into real estate, and I don't know. Maybe that was partially because being in Texas, it's such a good location for real estate. But what made you specifically pick Airbnbs of all places?
Yeah, I think we saw the opportunity there, and we really think it's up and coming. Even though it's been around for a little while, we only see see it growing quite a bit over the next 10, 15 years. Personally, Airbnbs and short-term rentals myself, and when me and my wife travel, we like to stay in them, and saw a lot of opportunity with investing in them. And also just it was doable, investment wise, and we wanted to. We're kind of investors at heart.
Yeah.
Both me and my business partner, with stocks and
take some risks
in real estate. we like to take calculated risk and invest, and I think I really saw a lot of value in kind of being my own boss and starting my own thing, and that's always been a little bit of a draw to me and appealing. And I think there's some parallels there with tennis, singles and doubles, having a partner, and kind of one thing that I always loved about tennis, it was up to you whether you won or lost, and you got to kind of figure it out, on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exactly why I like owning my own business, because it's kind of like, you're out there in the ocean, time to swim, and it's up to you. So.
And you get to kind of you're kind of the sailor, you're the captain of the ship. You're not necessarily. I definitely feel the same draw about and it's hard to be able to do that because so many entrepreneurial things kind of fail, and a lot of that I think is just because they don't have a clearly guided vision for where they're trying to go. But have you guys found that? I guess, especially with the markets being so crazy right now, has that been a challenge recently with what you guys are trying to do? I guess y'all started right in the middle of COVID, and so I think that could be seen as either a really good thing or a really bad thing. People aren't necessarily having extra cash to spend. People aren't necessarily able to, look to travel. So how did y'all manage those challenges when you were just starting out?
Yeah, I think it is kind of a difficult market to navigate with just the real estate market, and especially in Texas. But I think there's opportunity in every market. Interest rates are super low, and there's a lot of businesses that have been hurt, including short-term rentals by COVID. So then, maybe there's some opportunity to get started when some people are scared and are backing out of it. And so it's interesting, a lot of people chose Airbnbs and short-term rentals over hotels during COVID because because they were scared of maybe so many people being in and out of a hotel.
Yeah.
And so, you can look at it from different perspectives, different ways. I think it's still a good time that we kind of got in. And so it's gone really well so far. And travel's picking back up, and
yeah, that's awesome. What experiences from college? Whether I don't know if you had time to join any organizations or to really do anything outside of tennis, but what experiences in college kind of helped you the most where you are now?
Well, honestly, you would probably be better on giving advice for that than me. I know you're involved with
too much stuff.
You're involved with a lot, which is great, and you're in different organizations. I never really did that as much. It was And it's a little bit of a regret of mine. Like I wish I maybe joined some different organizations and got into more things, but it was pretty much just tennis for me in college, and yeah, in school, I was very busy with finance.
Being in Mays is not an easy path for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can only speak from my own experience, my own college experience, and it was mostly tennis. I grew a lot in college, just as a person, and ended up basically, like, going back to kind of Nacogdoches days. Grew up in the church and grew up in a Christian home, but really my faith wasn't my own until college, and became a believer and a Christian my junior year at A&M. And so that was like, speaking of just kind of, I don't know, college experiences really changing a person, preparing a person for, I don't know, for the future. That was the biggest game changer for me, because my whole life changed a ton at A&M.
Yeah.
And so started to get involved with some Bible studies in the church. So that was really it. It was tennis, later in school, some Bible studies, and school.
Yeah, it was faith, family, tennis.
Yeah.
Maybe a little school.
Little school, yeah.
Yeah. Nah, that's interesting. I would say for me, especially with coming to college, that's one of the big things about, and that's why I encourage people to go to college, not necessarily go straight pros, because, I mean, there's no other time where you get surrounded by people with such different views and mindsets. And I think that's something that has been both like a really big eye-opener and a challenge for me, is because I've been, I grew up in a Christian school, went to Christian middle school, went to Christian high school, and A&M, even though it's it has probably more of a Christian community than most other college campuses, there are, especially with being on a team with so many international guys from, Australia, from Europe, from all over. I mean, everybody's growing up with a completely different mindset. And so for me, that was a big challenge. And I don't know if you experienced that as well. I mean, you had a little bit of a different journey where, you kind of started to develop your faith throughout college. For me, it was kind of like, I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I know what I've been told my whole life, but now we're evaluating it and saying, okay, why is it actually, why do I believe that? And so were there things in college that made you start to kind of what things in college made you start to challenge what you believed, I guess? Like, what made you start to be like, okay, maybe, this faith thing actually means something?
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally went through that. Like, I think for me, like, my faith was just exactly what you said. I had been taught these things, but it wasn't my own.
Yeah.
It was my parents' faith, really. And I think you start, just as you start maturing and getting a little bit older. Not that I was very mature at 20 years old.
Yeah.
And still not that mature,
but still working on it.
Still working on it. But I think as you start to get older, you start to think about those things as, just what's the truth. You start to maybe seek truth, and like you said, you hear a lot of different perspectives, and you kind of start to realize, well, maybe this is like really important, because we're talking about things that really impact salvation and eternity, and where what your purpose is,
yeah,
as a person. And so I kind of had this, I don't know if I'd call it like a crisis of faith, but I kind of had this period where I was like, what do I really believe? I'm kind of a logical person, and like to kind of logic things out.
Yeah.
So I was watching like spiritual debates between, Christians and atheists and just different things, and started to do a little bit of my own just kind of research and try to figure it out. So I kind of had like two things going on, where it was like this kind of logical side of what really makes sense. Does the Bible make sense? And then I had this other side of kind of like just internal struggle and feeling like, what's my purpose? I don't feel I'm achieving a lot. I feel, happy and everything. I'm fine, but not really like truly satisfied.
Yeah.
Like, I think nothing like so extreme, like wasn't like depressed or anything, was like, perfectly like happy.
You're kind of like, I've achieved so much. Like, is there anything, it's like, is this all there is? I guess maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know like how to really describe it. Like, was fine, but not satisfied deeply, not, spiritually satisfied. And so, just I kind of had this moment my junior year where I gave my life to Christ, and he he really started changing me from the inside out, and is certainly still doing that. But came to know him and really found just kind of that deep satisfaction, and that kind of that void was just started to become filled in him.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing, and I think that that's something that, I think regardless of, where you are, I think it's just important to just even explore. I think that's what makes college such an amazing experience, is that, and it's not just religious things, but it's also like, you come in, like, for example, I came into college and I was like, all right, I never want to go into debt. I never want to, take risks or anything. But now I'm taking finance classes and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what you need in order to grow. So there are things where you have these preconceived notions where you're coming into college and you believe these things, but you start to realize through college, whether that's what you've believed in high school or whether that's about your faith or about how you saw the economy or the world, there are things where you're just exposed to things, and that's where I think taking, like you said, a rational, logical approach and just exploring it, not being afraid to discover what's actually true or what you believe in, not taking yourself too seriously, not being like, all right, well, I've believed it this long, that's true. It's like, I think it's always a process of trying to challenge what you believe and figure out, okay, is this actually true? And so I think that's the same with your tennis game or with sports when you're training. It's like, okay, I've hit my forehand like this for 10 years. Is this the best way? Can I tweak it? Can I make it a little bit better? Can I, change the way I'm eating or sleeping to make those incremental gains? And I think that's kind of the whole process, and what makes sports such a fun thing is that you're always growing, and I think that's something you can definitely carry into.
I mean, I think so many people are like are so afraid to be wrong, and like it's the ego sets in, and maybe there's a lack of humility, and people are just afraid to maybe challenge what they think, and really come to kind of seek and find the truth in whatever it is, and really there's no there's no downside to that, and
right.
I think that's hard for everyone, and myself included, to really kind of challenge the preconceived notions and seek to find the kind of the answers, even if you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, especially for me, I'm 21, still very, and it's funny because I'll probably listen to this podcast in a couple of years and be like, wow, I was really dumb back then. But I mean, for me, I feel like I'm really old. I'm the oldest I've ever been, but but at the same time, it's like, I haven't been around that long, and there's always, I mean, every day there's new research coming out or new information that might completely change what we believe. And so just being okay to, like you said, being okay to be wrong, and, learning from that is really important. Well, I think that's been, I mean, we've covered so many amazing topics. If we were to take a big picture, what was maybe, if you had to recommend like a book or a podcast, other than this one, of course, if you had to recommend a book or a podcast for somebody to read or to learn from, do you have anything that you just really enjoy listening to? It doesn't even have to be like educational. It could just be something that you enjoy listening to.
I'm not actually like a huge podcast listener. Like I don't listen to so many or so often, but just a couple things that come to mind, and I feel almost bad recommending this podcast, is he's hilarious though. It's Theo Vaughn.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't.
Okay, he is, Theo Vaughn is really funny. I think his podcast is called This Past Weekend.
Okay.
Desiring God by John Piper. I don't know if you know John Piper. He's
I
amazing.
mean, what are, I guess, maybe two people who you really look up to, whether that's on social media or just in life?
Two people that I look up to. Tom Brady.
Yeah. Pierce would love that. It's crazy that he's already retired.
I know. That was sad.
Yeah.
Books and someone I really like to read and feel like I really learn a lot from is C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing. I'm always trying to read and stuff. Reading some business books right now.
Yeah.
There's reading a book on negotiation. I read it last a couple months ago, and I don't know, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, whatever way that people can grow, I think that's amazing. And lastly, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, do you have an email that's best or a good way to contact you?
Yeah, it's just my name, shanevinsant@gmail.com.
Sweet.
And,
awesome.
that'd be great.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate your time. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about and kind of unpacking more ways to become an Aggie great. So, again, see y'all guys next week. And as always, thanks and gig 'em.